fun or exciting, you make it not that way. I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
Now back to the Bears Den with Drake Toll and Jamie Pickell for the Blonde Boys Power Hour.
Welcome back into the Petty Clinic Low T Bears Den. Happy Tuesday, everybody. May 11th today, breaking things down across Baylor athletics. And joining the show today to help us break it down across the Big 12 is the Big 12 Digital Correspondent Morgan Uber. Morgan, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on again today.
Drake, as always, great to be here. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. Morgan, I would be remiss if I didn't start in what was maybe some of the biggest news in baseball across the Big 12 over the course of the weekend. Baylor in a conference series putting up 17 runs in one inning, in the fifth inning alone, knocking off Kansas State 23-3 on Sunday. Just absolutely bonkers.
It was ridiculous. You and I, had talked the past couple weeks, how is this team going to come out after being off 9-10 days, due to finals? And it was clear that the rest did them some good. I mean, Friday, they come out in 17-2. And then, after the loss Sunday, to bounce back like they did, win 23-3, the longest fifth inning in program history, the most runs. I mean, we've seen this Baylor baseball team as this year has gone along, the hitting has just gotten better and better, and of course put together their best performance of the entire season. And it's good to be playing their best baseball late. Certainly gives them some staying power for where they'll be ranked heading into the College World Series.
Morgan, when it comes to this Baylor baseball team, they were projected preseason in the conference 8th in the Big 12, and they now have a shot pretty quickly to move up into 3rd now that they have the series edge over Texas Tech. I mean, is this one of the crazier season turnarounds from a preseason to I don't want to say postseason yet, but to the point where we are?
Definitely. I mean, you look at where this team started, and then now, like you mentioned, they're just one game behind Texas Tech in the standings. They do hold the series advantage. And then when you look at who they have left on their schedule as far as conference play goes, they got the two Oklahoma schools, Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, who are both, right on their tail for at 5th and 6th right now in the Big 12 conference standings. So those two series are obviously going to be huge in order to, see where they end up getting seeded heading into the Big 12 championship here in just a couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, I think this team, has just to put together 43 runs in 3 games in one weekend is just absolutely outrageous. And we talked about, the momentum that they gained after that Texas Tech series. Well, think about, what this kind of momentum is going to do for this team after they put together an offensive performance like they did. I mean, really on Saturday in the one game that they lost, going up against Jordan Wicks, a pitcher who's likely going to be a first rounder, definitely nothing to hang their hat on, losing 10-3, but to see how they bounced back on Sunday, that was what was really most impressive to me. And I think speaks volumes of what this team is capable of down the stretch and the rest of the way.
Morgan, one of the things that some Baylor fans still have reservations for when it comes to this season and the team and it's being able to finish complete series. I mean, you're going to have to win in a regional to go to a super regional, or in a super regional to go to the College World Series. I mean, you're going to have to win in most cases, 3 games. So with this team, one thing we haven't been able to see is that sweep. They keep winning 2, taking 2 out of 3 from conference opponents. How tough is it to sweep in Big 12 play?
Yeah, I really do think, these top 6-7 teams have really, it is. I mean, it's like a grind. It's like anything, like our men's basketball, what we saw every night, every single series for these baseball teams, going on the road has especially been tough for Baylor this season. I know they've been tremendous at home, but yeah, the series sweeps, I do think you can't look at it and say, at least they're winning the series overall, especially here late. Definitely, I do think it's a tough conference, and it shows the strength of this conference. And, with the way things started early on in the season, the SEC kind of had our numbers. It was, a little bit degrading there. But I think the way that the whole conference, has really bounced back and played, throughout the middle of the season and late has just been really impressive. So I think, the sky's really the limit for this Baylor baseball program right now, and they've been a whole lot of fun to watch down the stretch.
Morgan, what is it that makes this Baylor baseball team so much better now than they were projected to be earlier on in the season? Because like we said, 8th in the Big 12 preseason poll. They lost to UTRGV earlier in the year, started 2-5, and here they are knocking on the door of being in the top third of the Big 12.
Yeah, that is a great question, Drake. And I think it's just a matter of this team is putting together the right pieces and getting hot at the right time. It's a team that has really just, come together and found their confidence and found their rhythm as the season has gone along. You think about how all of these teams, drastically just had to stop and end their seasons last year due to COVID, but then able to come out of that and come back from that with all the experience that they gained. And think about, these rosters, not just, Baylor, but across the country, definitely the biggest rosters that coaches have ever had to manage. So being able to bring in all these pieces and those freshmen, just really, learning from some of these veteran seniors, I think it just took them a little bit to get going. But, with the way that they've been able to string together some wins, I do think it's a confidence thing for this team. And, baseball, as we know, is such a mental game. So, when you do get hot and you can stay there, that definitely helps the mindset. So that's, I think, been just the biggest key for this Baylor team and, what they've talked about as the season has gone along.
Morgan, when you look at a turnaround season like what Baylor Baseball has put together, where, like we talked about, you had the first early season series loss to UTRGV, struggles were there, and you weren't sure. I mean, Baylor wasn't supposed to be good at baseball. That was expected out of this team. The way they've turned it around, how much credit do you give to Steve Rodriguez and what he and his staff have done to help with this turnaround?
It's been tremendous. And I think one of the things that his staff and, Coach Rodriguez did in the middle of the season, they end up switching up the lineup, moving, Pineda and McKenzie. McKenzie had been the leadoff hitter, and to, move him down to number 2. That's really been working. And I guess, I don't know the exact record off the top of my head, but it would be interesting to see, when they made that switch, the Baylor's definitely been significantly better. Again, don't know the exact record, but significantly better since that point in the middle of this season. So, I know his staff has come in and really, I listened to an interview that he did with one of your staff members actually just yesterday, and the hitting aspect of just being able to, break down the players hitting with the technology that they have there at Baylor, but making it simple enough for them to, not have to overthink it, just tweaking a couple mechanical things and then going up to the plate and just, seeing good pitches. And I think, that's been one thing since he's gotten there, that this hitting, has just been tremendous. And this season has really just, culminated all of that work that they've done.
Morgan, along with that, you got other teams in the Big 12 that are seeing a lot of, it's Texas, TCU, the race to the top. And now Texas taking that series in Fort Worth. How big was that? And those two teams obviously being on the national scale, their World Series hopes are alive and well.
These are two teams that likely are going to be hosting here, and we'll be finding out this week exactly those predetermined sites. But yeah, I'll be honest, I was a little bit shocked with Texas and the way that they were able to come into Fort Worth and take 2 out of 3 from TCU, especially the game on Sunday in shutout fashion. This was a series that I had been really looking forward to, and was really TCU at that point, number 3 in the country, Texas 6th, I guess, depending on the polls that you were looking at. So, two teams that definitely have a chance to make a run all the way and potentially be national champions. So you think about that, 2 teams in the top, 5, 6 vying for a national championship, definitely contenders. They have the talent, both the pitching and the hitting, just 2 very well-rounded programs. But yeah, Texas definitely looked pretty dominant in that series, if you're just thinking to what they were able to do on Sunday against the Horned Frogs. So I'm really looking forward to here in just a couple weeks to see, what happens, who's going to be ranked number 1 heading into our Big 12 championship. It's definitely those 2 teams have separated themselves if you look at the standings. So it's either going to be the Horned Frogs or the Longhorns there. And, I do think Baylor at this point could make a case and could make a run to be sitting there right at number 3. So, definitely great for the strength of the conference and these programs just continuing to get better as the season has gone on.
Morgan, card before the horse, but it's coming. We're on the cusp of the Big 12 championship tournament in Oklahoma City. I mean, that thing's just going to be crazy.
It is, and I'm so looking forward to it. This will be my very first Big 12 championship to go to in baseball, and it's, we get a whole nother day of it with that play-in game that was added on Tuesday. So basically 6 whole days in Oklahoma City. I've heard outstanding things. This is the last year that it'll be there, with the championship moving to Arlington next year, a little bit closer to home for us here at the Big 12 Conference, but Oklahoma City, an incredible host. I've only heard outstanding things, and I think we're going to see a whole lot of great baseball, so I cannot wait.
Wow. Morgan, last thing, really touching on Baylor baseball, Andy Thomas this past week just went on an absolute tear. I mean, really ended up being a National Player of the Week in, I think it was college baseball, collegiate baseball newspaper, named him their National Player of the Week, senior class award finalist. He went 8 for 11, 6 runs, 3 home runs, 9 RBI. I mean, Andy Thomas is about as hot as they come in this conference right now.
Yeah, and I know a lot of Baylor fans were probably disappointed he wasn't named the Player of the Week, and I did see a lot of negative reactions and comments on social media. But he what an incredible week what he was able to string together, and for a player, a leader of this team. From what Coach Rodriguez says, he's the heart and soul, and came back for his last season because he just wanted to leave everything out there. And boy, I mean, did he do it? Especially this past weekend, going 8 for 11. 3 home runs, 9 RBIs, just absolutely incredible. And being named a senior class award finalist, what a tremendous honor for him. And then I know fans have the opportunity to vote to, help him, be able to attain that award. So I know Baylor Baseball is pushing that on social media. So for fans, here's your chance. And, definitely he's been just tremendous to watch this season.
Morgan, moving over to the softball side, Baylor softball swept by Texas this weekend. A dominant performance by Coach White's team. I mean, UT just looked good, really, really good, especially coming off of that the series where they were swept by Oklahoma State. And on the other side, you had Oklahoma State and Oklahoma squaring off, and showed that the big dogs, that OU, they're not indestructible, entirely indestructible. It'll be a big weekend this weekend for the softball championship.
What I learned last weekend was, Bedlam is Bedlam. There's no doubt about that. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, I do really believe, Drake, that those two teams have separated themselves. And if you look at, the results of Big 12 conference play in softball this year, it showed that both of these teams swept Texas during the regular season, which, that's a little bit of a surprise for me, based on what Texas was ranked coming in and what they're still ranked. But, the Sunday rubber match of Bedlam, I think, like you mentioned, that they're not Oklahoma, while they win their 9th straight regular season title in the Big 12. I do think the Cowgirls, they're right there with them this season. You look at what they did on Sunday, Cowgirls down 9-1. They have a huge inning, and Oklahoma has to make a pitching change. But, pitcher Nicole May for the Sooners, a freshman, has been outstanding. She showed that on Sunday, bases loaded. Sooners only up by 2 runs at that point, and she gets out of the jam and strikes out the second batter there for Oklahoma State in the lineup. So, I do think it's probably going to come down to those two teams. Baylor sitting at number 4. They have the 4th seed, and unfortunately they're in Oklahoma's group for the softball championship. So they have Texas Tech. The Bears have Texas Tech first, which is a team that they were able to sweep during the regular season, but then unfortunately they have to go up and face the Sooners. So maybe they were able to learn some things. Hopefully, I'm sure that they'll be able to take into that game after they were swept by the Sooners earlier. But, I do think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the two teams that reside in Oklahoma. And I think we're going to, be seeing a lot of great softball this weekend.
Moving into the postseason, Morgan, if things align for Baylor softball, wherever they're placed in a region, it looks like they'll be either a 2 or 3 seed, which there's not much difference in either, aside from being the home team in round 1. Is there a chance this softball team with senior-laden pitching and some solid bats is able to make a run?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything's out of the question at this point. And I think, you mentioned the senior-laden team, and that's one thing that we've seen in every sport this season or this entire year with the difficulties with COVID, particularly, in basketball, baseball, and softball. Just having that veteran presence there, and similar to, what I mentioned in baseball, you have a whole lot of players that were able to come back after a COVID season that was cut short. A lot of players that want to leave it all on the field after realizing, what was taken from you in an instant, realizing that, at the end of the day, we can't take anything for granted. So I do think nothing's off the table. It'll be really interesting to see, where they end up landing, who they face. I think at that point, then I'll be able to, give you a better idea of just how far they'll be able to go in this thing. But I definitely think, they've proven that they're a talented team, and they play in a really tough conference here in the Big 12 and face great competition. So that's only going to really help them in the postseason.
Morgan, on top of that, I know I'm going to kind of throw you a bit of a curveball here, but Baylor men's tennis headed to Orlando as one of the final 16 teams left in postseason play after 2 wins over the weekend in Waco to open up the first and second round of the NCAA tournament. How big is it to have Big 12 teams representing the conference on that stage in the men's tennis game?
It's great. And on the men's side, we have 3 teams. So definitely really exciting there. Those 3 teams that, all tied number 1 in the regular season for that regular season championship, TCU, Texas, and Baylor. But yeah, Baylor came out absolute dominant performance, defeating Oregon, 4-0 after, a huge long hour delay. Plus, I guess due to rain, had to, move inside there and end up just putting on a dominant performance. So, Michael Woodson really happy, for him getting that promotion, officially named head coach of that program. And I think, they've just been outstanding and been able to really defend that home court. So looking forward to seeing, what they can do there in Orlando. They'll face number 15 Ole Miss, and, wishing for the best and wishing that our Big 12 teams, represent this conference really strong.
Morgan, on top of that, Baylor men's basketball making a couple splashes within the last week. You've got not only James Akinjo joining from Arizona, but now also bringing in Fairmont State guard and a guy that a lot of folks here are excited about, Dale Bonner, a really good shooter. I mean, Scott Drew said, yeah, we won a national championship, but why stop there?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely just love this pickup. And I think, based on what we saw, last year, having the best backcourt in college basketball, you kind of think, okay, with, the expectation that Jared Butler, is going to leave. I guess it's not completely off the table, but we know, Teague and Mitchell are both gone. What are you going to do? And I really like these offseason pickups that he's got. And of course, it's no surprise, though, that he was able to, bring in 2 very talented guards, one of them being a Division II level. You mentioned Bonner. And so it's going to be interesting to see, it is going to be a big change and big adjustment, of course, for him to come in, at the Division I. But he's a hot 3-point shooter, which, of course, is one of Baylor's greatest strengths that we saw last year. And I have all the confidence in the world in Scott Drew and what he's done in the transfer market. I mean, you think about Teague and Mitchell, 2 guys that, I would say Mitchell wasn't all that, highly touted at the time, but I think player development is what Scott Drew does. And I mean, the Freddie Gillespie story is the perfect example of, you get a Division III player that comes in and you make him a big household name as a D1 player. So I have no doubts that a Division II level Bonner is going to be able to come in and find his stride there. And, I think the biggest thing with both of these guys, and you hear Coach Drew mention it all the time, is that they're both culture fits. And not every player, not every guy is going to fit, the Baylor culture. And for these 2 to do that and also be extremely talented and come on to a national championship reigning team is exciting, and definitely like these 2 pickups from everything that I've heard and read.
Well, Morgan, last question for you here. I know there's a lot. As much as things seem like they're settling down, there's still so much going on between men's tennis, women's tennis. You've got softball, baseball, obviously, and then football recruiting, men's and women's basketball recruiting. I mean, it's still all happening right now. But with the Baylor Lady Bears hiring Nikki Collin, now a week removed, we talked to you a week ago today, is when really that went official. And today it went official that she's hired her first staff member, retaining Jeremy Hefner, who is the strength and conditioning coordinator for the team, and a huge recruiting. Her first big recruiting get is one of the coaches that's already in Waco. A week removed from the Nikki Collin hire, are you still do you still have as much optimism as you did a week ago with what Baylor has done in bringing her to Waco?
I have more optimism than I did, especially after hearing her press conference. I had just, read and heard, similar to you, listening in to what people had to say. Really hadn't heard a lot from her personally. But after the way that she took the stage, I mean, she's humorous, she's confident, she's honest. And everyone, that talked about her said that she is a people person first. And I think that was so apparent in what she showed in that press conference. She talked about her primary job being to re-recruit this team. And, just before we came on here, I did see the report that Moon Urson had entered the transfer portal. So, that made things a little bit uneasy. But, I also have heard, in interviews, she did a great one with Holly Rowe, right after she accepted the job. And, I love the question that Holly asked her. What is your conversation right now with Melissa Smith? And she said, okay, here's how we're going to make you the number 1 pick next year. I mean, that's something as a player, that's what you want to hear. And I think, she displays that same confidence that we saw on the stage, amongst her team. There's no doubt that she's going to be a coach that people want to play for. So I do think, and she mentioned, filling in and coming behind a legend in Kim Mulkey. She's not trying to be Kim Mulkey. And I think that's, for her to acknowledge that, she still has the same expectations, of course, winning national championships, but she's going to do it in her own way, in her own style, and bring some of that pro style approach to her coaching and to the team. So I was, absolutely loved her press conference. It was one of the best that I've truly ever seen. And so really just very optimistic about the future of Baylor women's basketball.
I love it. Morgan, last question for you, our Bear Games question of the day, whether it be as a player or as a fan of your team. What is the biggest victory? I mean, just largest margin of victory that you ever been a part of? I know we talked yesterday about your worst defeat, and this is all in with Baylor Baseball putting up a 17 spot in the 5th inning on Sunday, and it just being it goes from, oh, this is bad to this is sad. Where in your life in sports have you been on the winning end of one of those?
Well, I was an athlete, but I wouldn't say, I can't think of a huge win that I really had playing lacrosse. But, as a reporter, I'll tell you, I was a part of the 2015 World Series. I worked for Fox Sports Midwest covering the Kansas City Royals, and I had covered them also in 2014 for a local affiliate, an NBC affiliate, in Columbia, Missouri. So, experiencing the defeat of the Royals there, they lost to the Giants in 2014. But then in 2015, to be with that regional sports network and be a part of the Royals run was, outstanding. And of course, they had to win the ALDS against Houston. And I don't know if people really remember what happened there, but they were down 6-2 and end up, that was after 7 innings, and then put up 5 runs in the 8th inning. So to do what they did in the ALDS and then win the World Series that year, definitely, I guess that's my most exciting, victory. Although I wasn't an athlete on the team, but covering it was something special.
I love it. Morgan, thanks for joining the show. As always today, pleasure to hear from you and get perspective across the Big 12 in all athletics and a little bit of lacrosse and baseball, MLB baseball thrown in there too.
Drake, thanks for having me. As always, appreciate it.
Absolutely. That was Morgan Uber, Big 12 digital correspondent. When we come back from this break, been talking about a lot of Big 12 sports. Let's talk about Baylor football. We're going to center in Baylor football with the big board coming up with Grayson Grunte for what he has seen so far in Baylor practices and what you can expect when it comes to recruiting and building the 2022 class even further the next few weeks. I'm Drake Toll, joined in studio by Marquise Cooley, joined by Bump. We got Armstrong, Sims, and Jack McKenzie. When we come back, Grayson Grunte joins us for the big board. After that, we break down some more things across college athletics before being joined by Sue Favor, who covers women's college basketball, to talk